One of the real bad things about getting old, and I do realize I'm much closer to being an old man than a young man, is that you do have to have days like this where people that have impacted you, whether it's directly in your life, like a family member or a friend, or people that you admired from afar and really appreciated their work, they kind of pass away along the line, and maybe a little bit of piece of you goes along with it. You know, that thing that you grew up loving, you know, your first love when it comes to entertainment, for me, like a Star Wars, or something maybe you discovered later in life as you were going through like difficult times, you know, and kind of discovering comic books later in life. And today we lost James Earl Jones, the voice of Darth Vader, Mufasa, just a lot of great characters, a resume that stands up really to almost anybody in Hollywood history. And then we also lost John Cassaday, the fantastic artist, you know, really revitalized X-Men at one time with the Astonishing X-Men, did one of the greatest comic book stories of all time, co-created, in fact, with Warren Ellis and Planetary. And, you know, it sucks. And you know, when you're younger, you hear about death. Maybe you go to a funeral here and there, but it doesn't really affect you. But certainly as you get older and you start losing people, and really at this point, I've only got my dad left. I lost all my grandparents. I've lost my mother. You know, these things tend to like hit you a little bit harder. In fact, you know, we lost Skip and Tosh, who was a good friend of mine, friend of the channel, had been on the channel for a long time, just a great dude. Was actually younger than me, and he passed away last year. I tried to do a video talking about it, actually. But I couldn't stop breaking down crying, because my relationship, obviously, with Skip and Tosh was a lot different than my relationship with James Earl Jones or John Cassaday. I did want to talk about the deaths of James Earl Jones and John Cassaday and their legacies, and you know, kind of how they affected me. And I definitely want to hear from you guys. You know, do you have a James Earl Jones story where you met him in person, or maybe something was going on and you saw one of his movies and it really helped you out in a moment of need? Or even John Cassaday, who I hear is just a phenomenal human being. Never met him personally, even though I've met quite a few people within the comic book industry. Never met John, but you will never hear anybody really say a cross word about the man. It appears that he was just an upstanding gentleman that you would want to be friends with. He was a really good guy. So we'll talk about all this stuff. We'll start out with James Earl Jones, since he's the older gentleman, certainly entered my life a lot earlier, and I imagine a lot of you as well. James Earl Jones, a commanding presence on screen who nonetheless gained greater fame off camera as the sonorous voice of Star Wars villain Darth Vader and Mufasa. The benevolent leader in The Lion King died Monday. He was 93. Jones, who burst into national prominence in 1970 with his powerful Oscar-nominated performance as America's first black heavyweight champion in The Great White Hope. The distinguished star made his big screen debut in Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, and was noteworthy in many other films, including Claudine opposite Diane Carroll, Field of Dreams as a reclusive author Terrence Mann, and The Sandlot as the intimidating neighborhood guy Mr. Myrtle. As I've mentioned, my first love, you know, as far as movies and stuff, and I've always been a cinephile from a very young age, probably starting like 4 or 5. I was really into movies, is Star Wars. Those are some of my very first memories, is loving the Star Wars movies, and certainly the sequels, and playing with the toys. And I remember one time, you know, when I was very much younger, you know, I was maybe like 7. So my older brother would have been 10. My younger brother would have been 3 or something like that. You had the Darth Vader kit that you could put all your Star Wars, like Kenner Star Wars toys in, and would hold them all. You know, it was pretty solid. But if you put all the toys in it, it got a little bit more solid. And we also liked wrestling. I remember I jumped off the top bunk bed and hit my brother in the head with it, and slightly knocked him out. And I remember hiding for like 45 minutes before he found me. And he gave me the beating of a lifetime. And I totally deserved it, because I probably gave him a concussion. So we were always playing with Star Wars toys, and Star Wars has always really been a part of my life. But, you know, even beyond Star Wars, and certainly James Earl Jones as the voice of Darth Vader, it gets no better than that. You know, he was the voice of CNN. This is CNN kind of guy. If you look at my top 5 movies of all time, my personal favorites, #1 is Star Wars. #2 is Conan the Barbarian. #3 is The Goonies. #4 is Sandlot. #5 is The Matrix. And he's in 3 or 4 of them. Obviously, he's Darth Vader in the Star Wars movie. He's Thulsa Doom in Conan the Barbarian. And then he's Mr. Myrtle in The Sandlot. Shockingly, he's not really the good guy in any of those. Certainly, he's one of the greatest villains, or the voice of one of the greatest villains of all time, it's Star Wars, but his Thulsa Doom is absolutely haunting stuff. In fact, who was it? Mark Miller was talking about how he hadn't watched Conan the Barbarian from John Milius. And if you've never seen this movie, it's absolutely amazing. It's perfect. It is a perfect film. He said he hadn't watched it since like 1982. And he recently went and watched it again. He was like, I forgot how good this was. So I was like, yeah, I love that movie. It's got the greatest action scene of all times when Conan and Valeria and Subutai put on the war paint. They go into the palace. They steal the princess. Just phenomenal stuff there. And James Earl Jones is an absolutely commanding presence in that movie as Thulsa Doom. He's also equally terrifying as Darth Vader. And I just watched it a couple of days ago because Mark had mentioned it on social media. I was like, man, I need to see that again. And then I had already watched the Star Wars trilogy earlier this year with my 5-year-old, whose name is Conan, by the way, after Conan the Barbarian, because I really do like that movie. So he and I had watched that one. And then tonight, after hearing the news of James Earl Jones, we did go watch The Lion King again, because that's my favorite animated movie of all time. And so I watched that with Conan as well. So we've been going through the James Earl Jones stuff. And then I really love the Sandlot. You know, as a kid from Missouri, just like a little small town, playing baseball in the empty lot right next to my house, essentially all summer long. And then certainly playing on teams and stuff like that. And jumping on your bike, you know, with somebody on the handlebars with a baseball bat, like strapped to your back, trying to find a pickup game around town. Like, that was life for me for literally like 7 years straight. That's what we did all summer long. So I was like naturally gravitated when I saw the Sandlot movie. And you know, there's so many great themes in that. And James Earl Jones certainly plays a big part in it, you know, where this Mr. Myrtle guy that owns this junkyard with the Beast is just horrible man, and the Beast will eat people and all this kind of stuff. And it turns out he's just, you know, a retired baseball player that got hit in the eye, went blind, and he's the nicest guy in the world. And all you had to do was ask him for the ball, and he would have got it for you. You know, the Beast isn't even terrifying. And the reveal in that movie is just really great. And I don't know that anybody would have like the stature of James Earl Jones, because he's a big dude, but he also had that like kindness factor in him that really just sold the role so earnestly. And it makes it something that really just stands out, even though it's a pretty small role. You don't see him a ton. You know, see him in a couple of flashback kind of things when Squints, I think, is telling some of the stories. And then you see him at the end when he finally meets the neighbor kid. And he just encapsulated the role. And I think a lot of people also probably remember him from like A Field of Dreams, which I certainly liked and still enjoy to this day. It's not my favorite baseball movie, Sandlot is, but it's certainly up there. And he's also had, you know, narrated so many like documentaries and stuff, because he just has that super awesome, distinctive voice. But he also had this really kind spirit behind it where you wanted him to tell a story. And I think that's something, you know, that'll endure essentially forever. I mean, that is his legacy. The last time I personally remember seeing James Earl Jones like on the big screen, or even on television, I guess in this case it's television, there was an episode on The Big Bang Theory. Yes, I watched The Big Bang Theory. I think there's enough funniness going on in there. And there's a great episode where Sheldon, the lead character that has Asperger's or something like that, he can't get into San Diego Comic-Con, so he's going to create his own Comic-Con, and he's got a whole list of people he wants to invite. All of them turn him down, and he finds out where James Earl Jones is having dinner, you know, snooping through like his Instagram and Twitter feed, and goes to like ambush him to get him to sign up for the Comic-Con that he's going through. And it turns out James Earl Jones is just like this real big nerd that wants to hang out. And they're just like going around town. They're on the Ferris wheel. They end up in a sauna and stuff. And the last scene is, I think they were going and like knocking on Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher's door, and then like running away, playing like little, you know, grade school tricks on Carrie Fisher. And obviously Carrie Fisher's already died too. So if you don't like The Big Bang Theory, I would say, you know, go watch that episode. And while you're at it, go watch the Bob Newhart episode where he debuts as Professor Proton. Obviously, we lost Bob Newhart. He was another great actor that had a really distinct style to him. But there's a really funny episode where he's Professor Proton, which is basically like Bill Nye the Science Guy, but for Sheldon and Leonard when they were kids. And you get a really good cameo in there. And I thought that show always did that kind of stuff really well with the cameos and really spotlighting people that have been parts of nerd culture and really time into it. So really am going to miss James Earl Jones, but he did live a very full life. You know, his body of work spans literally like 6 decades. He was working from the 60s all the way until recently. You know, he was the voice of Mufasa, I believe, in the Lion King live action remake, whatever you want to call it. I personally haven't watched that one, but he lived a long, full life. He was acclaimed many times, and you know, it seems like he was a very, very nice man. Now, moving on from James Earl Jones, we do need to talk about John Cassaday, the amazing artist that we're losing way too young, just far too young. This is so sad. John Cassaday, multiple Eisner Award-winning comic artist, has passed away at the age of 52, said to have been admitted to the ICU at Mount Sinai West Hospital in New York last week. Cassaday's sister, Robin, confirmed on social media yesterday that a little bro, John, passed away at 6:51 p.m. Texas time. Please keep me and my mom in your prayers. Cassaday will forever be remembered for his time as the artist on Astonishing X-Men. Together with writer Joss Whedon, Cassaday's re-envisioning of the X-Men in a post-New X-Men world from 2004 to 2008 elevated Astonishing into one of Marvel's best books of the time. Cassaday's prolific body of work also includes the likes of Captain America with Jeff Loeb, co-creating Planetary with Warren Ellis, I Am Legion with Fabian Nuri, and Desperados with Jeff Marriott. Cassaday's writing credits include work on Hellboy Weird Tales, Rocketeer Adventures, Bela Lugosi Tales from the Grave, Little Nemo, Dream Another Dream, Union Jack, and X-Men Alpha Flight. And John Cassaday is just one of those singularly talented artists that you just don't get to see in comic books very often, that are so in demand as soon as they show up. And they're basically in demand until they decide it's time to walk away. And certainly a lot of people do recognize the genius that is John Cassaday. His Astonishing X-Men run probably gets more accolades and acclaim because it is the X-Men franchise. And the visuals aren't, quite frankly, astonishing. Maybe not quite to the Jim Lee redesigns for X-Men #1, but right up there with it. You know, some of the best X-Men visuals you'll ever see in your life. And I know a lot of people that knew John Cassaday, like personally, it sounds like he was just like the nicest guy in the world. He was a very good looking man. Apparently he was the life of the town when he went to cons and things. The lady was really into him, but he never really let it go to his head. He sounded like he was like a super humble guy. The thing that I remember mostly, because I just finished reading it and reviewing the entire series, is John Cassaday's Planetary, along with Warren Ellis, which is just an amazing series. If you've never read it, you know, it's something that needs to be experienced to be believed. It fully encapsulates the genius that is John Cassaday with that series, because essentially every single issue is a love letter to a different kind of Western entertainment. Although saying it's just like Western entertainment does a disservice, because there's like a kaiju issue, there's a like Hong Kong entertainment issue, and Warren Ellis and John Cassaday, what they did there was brilliant. But he was having to do so many different things. Like he was doing awesome action scenes in like Tokyo in widescreen, which was really cool and really kind of groundbreaking at the time. But he was also doing kaijus, and you were getting like Mothra and Godzilla. But he was also doing like sci-fi space adventure stuff with like a version of the Fantastic Four. But he was also doing superheroes, because you had like a version of like Shazam and all that kind of stuff, and different allegories to famous heroes. And he was even doing pulpy stuff to where they're honoring like the Shadow and the Phantom and Tarzan and all these kind of characters, and Sherlock Holmes and all this stuff. And the dude was just absolutely brilliant. He was an amazing visual storyteller. We don't get really artists that are this good, but also have so much love for comic books that they really embrace the art of visual storytelling. A lot of people can go out there and do really good visuals, but not everybody can actually tell a story with those visuals. And John Cassaday, you know, he's in the upper crust. He's in the top 1%. He's probably in the top 1% of the top 1% when it comes to comic book artists of all time, being able to take a story and adapt his visual abilities to it and make it all just kind of flow out of the page, and not only keep up with the writing, but enhance it, and a lot of times even overtake it by telling a more competent story with the visuals than even Warren Ellis was able to do with the writing. That didn't happen all the time, because Warren Ellis was certainly on the top of his game during Planetary, but he certainly accomplished that. And, you know, 52 years old is very young to be passing away. And it sounds like he had a heart attack, which is really sad stuff. You know, and I'm 46 myself. having 3 little kids, and I guess the oldest isn't so little anymore. He's 9 years old now, but having a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, you know, thinking if I only had like 4 or 6 more years, like, oh my goodness, you know, that's not long enough. I need more time. And to have somebody as brilliant and well-liked and well-loved throughout the comic book industry just kind of be taken away from us way too early, you know, it's another enormous, you know, kick to the stones of comic book fans who haven't had a lot to cheer about lately. And I know a lot of people were kind of giving him crap for like a recent like X-Men, or I think it was an X-Force cover that he had done. He's fucking John Cassaday. If he wants to change his art style, change your art style. You know, if something's going on that we don't know about and he wasn't able to do things that we remember him being able to do in his prime, so what? We're getting new John Cassaday art, because today we're not going to get that anymore, and that's sad. And it's an enormous loss for the comic book community and in the profession of comic book art. We've lost somebody that had so much to teach and to get out there to the other artists out there, and it's just heartbreaking stuff. And it's just one of those things, you know, as you get older, it just becomes a part of life, and it absolutely sucks. And I don't enjoy having to talk about this stuff, but I did enjoy, you know, kind of talking about the way that James Earl Jones and John Cassaday had kind of affected me in different points in my life, because, you know, I didn't discover comics until I was in my 30s. Well, I had read comics when I was much younger, but I didn't really read comics until I was into my 30s and stuff. And certainly Star Wars was right there for my beginning, you know, kind of memories as a child. It was always there with me. So there will never be another James Earl Jones. There will never be another John Cassaday. You know, there's never going to be a Stan Lee. People are like, who's the next Stan Lee? There is no next Stan Lee. Stan Lee is a singularly talented individual that can never be replicated or even come close to it. If you try to be Stan Lee, you're just going to fail. You got to just be like the next whoever you're going to be, and you know, blaze your own trail, make your own impact on comic books. Because if you try to be the next John Cassaday, you're going to fall mightily, because he set the bar up so high, not only with the standard of his art and the storytelling, but the way that he carried himself and the way that he interacted with people and the way that he treated other people in the industry. You know, you're going to have to make your own legacy, and you don't want to live up to something like that. And you certainly don't want to live up to a legacy like a James Earl Jones, where he certainly has, you know, a 60-year resume to speak on in some of the most successful franchises and movies and some of the best acting performances, you know, in the history of Hollywood. So it sucks. It hurts. Nothing good is about this, you know, unless maybe James Earl Jones was in pain or something like that. I don't want people to just kind of sit there like bedridden and in pain, but it doesn't sound like that was the case. But he certainly lived a long life, well into his 90s. And unfortunately, John Cassaday was not given that long of a life. You know, we lost him 40 years earlier than that. And it's just sad stuff. But I definitely want to hear from you guys. How did James Earl Jones and John Cassaday affect you? How are you feeling about this? Because I think it's good that we talk about stuff like this.